My vision is shared by many people, hopefully millions of people, in that the Kennet and Avon canal runs between Bristol and Reading, has done for the last 200 years, was thought about in the Napoleonic Wars, and what we're doing now is restoring it to a condition where modern day man can enjoy it in the fields of leisure and tourism. We believe at the end of the project it's going to generate another 1,600 jobs to those that existed before we started, arriving about 2,600 jobs. It will also produce about £28 million every year into the local communities, and the kind of work that we see around us now will involve 500 man-years of construction. The other things that are quite important, it will generate about £50 million of private sector investment. It's a huge socio-economic benefit.
Along this section we'll be laying pipes, part of the 450 diameter pipeline, and you can see the pipes laid out ready for constructing in a trench. Also in this area we're doing a new edge wall which will generally raise the area and give us a new edge protection to prevent leakage through the side of the canal. And at the far end, where you can see by the bridge, there's a wing wall in concrete. At the end of that wing wall, we'll be constructing the outlet to one of the lock by-weirs. So that will allow water to get from the top side of the lock down into this bottom pan.
We've got to take out all the soft material, the silt, the clay, until we get down to a formation which is solid enough to be able to build off. On top of that we put a stone kind of surfacing down, and then on top of that we put the liner. Now the liner is built up of 3 layers. There's 2 geotechnical fleece blankets which protect the PVC, and then the PVC liner itself. The geotextile blanket, what this does, there's a layer above and below the PVC. Now, the layer below protects the PVC from any punctures from stones possibly coming up and protruding above the surface. The geotextile above protects it when we're pouring the concrete.
So far the piles have been installed to a preliminary set. They're going to be driven down to towpath level. Once they're driven down, they'll be cut off and basically buried. When we're finished here, you won't see the piles and you won't see any evidence of us having worked here. All you see is the soft canal edge as existing.
The process continues to look at the design of the works that are going to be taking place and build in parameters to make sure that plants and animals aren't harmed, or if we do need to move them and replace them later, to make sure we get the right conditions to sustain them.
Here we're using puddle clay to line the canal. In other parts, as we've seen, we're using PVC lining and Bentamat lining. Here we're using puddle clay imported from clay pits near Swindon in Wiltshire, and this was the traditional method, of course, used for lining the canal. The only thing we're not doing here is driving herds of sheep over and over the canal to puddle it in.
When we first looked at this project, we'd planned to pile both sides of the embankment. We've had problems with leakage here, but looking at the project again, we decided that we could leave the offside embankment as it is and actually breach that and create a conservation lake, which is an ecology gain.
Making the locks that you've used much more user-friendly without doubt. The hill grips, obviously easier to push the lock gates round, and the additional lock ladder, which will be on both sides of the locks now, obviously that speaks for itself as regards a safety feature.
It's absolutely fantastic getting this canal up and running with this lottery money. Thank you, Heritage.
I started with British Waterways when basically the canal was still derelict in places. So I've seen a tremendous improvement. We're now open all the way from Hanham up to Reading. It's just going to be there, hopefully, for everybody for a very, very long time.
The sheer complexity and the sheer quantity is enormous. It took a lot of work to get it going, and there's a lot of work to get it finished.
It's not important to preserve every aspect of the landscape, but it's important to ensure that the key elements, the things that make important areas important and special places special, they are preserved for future generations.
A challenge to try and combine those ecological needs with the engineering and the future needs of boaters, fishermen and the wildlife.
It's nice to see the money being invested in the environment rather than just for specialist things like the opera and that. I think it's beneficial to everyone, the canal. Like, people like to walk along it, cyclists, boaters. It's a very sort of diverse amount of people that use a canal for their own different purposes. So it's good.
Indeed, at the lock here, we call them gongoozlers, as people come and gawp as other boats go through the lock. And I have counted in the space of perhaps 10 minutes, we get from 2 or 3 to nearly 200 people suddenly appear on the bridge and alongside the lock, watching the happenings. And that's rather nice that people are that interested. And there's always questions. People really say, well, when we tell them there's 70,000 gallons of water every time the lock operates, it's figures like that which really surprised them.
A fulfilment of the historical side of the canals coming back to life, not as a trading area but as a leisure activity, causing a lot of employment and a lot of health to people walking, cycling, etc. along the canal side.
I don't think the public at large really appreciate what goes into redoing heritage structures, and it's time they learned.
I think it is a marvellous thing because it's obviously going to spread to a wider number of people to be able to come and enjoy what I have enjoyed for many years and would like to continue to do so.
Oh, I think John Rennie would be extremely pleased to see what has been done and that the canal is still here.
It's absolutely fantastic.
A challenge.
It's a good show. It's good to see it done right, isn't it?
It's going to be brilliant.
Seeing life as it was.
To see the completion of their dreams and the fulfilment of their dreams.
A lot of hard work, a lot of time and effort.
We will be able to share a lot more of this waterway with a lot more people.
When we reline Bath Valley, it looks just as if we hadn't done it.
I'd come back here and stand up on that bridge, point in that direction and say, I built that.
We'll be able to concentrate where we want to improve even more facilities for the public.
I think what's always in the back of my mind when I think about what are we actually creating, and we're creating something which is safeguarding the country's heritage for our children and our children's children to enjoy. And that to me is the most important thing, I think, and which should rest behind everything that we do.